The International Labor Organization expects unemployment to remain high this year. According to the ILO's Global Employment Trends 2011 report, the job market will continue to be weak in 2011, specifically in developed economies like the U.S. Official global unemployment stood at 205 million in 2010, essentially unchanged from 2009 and close to 28 million more than in 2007 when the global economic crisis began. The ILO expects unemployment to hit a rate of 6.1% this year, equivalent to 203 million people. Joining us now live in the studio to talk more about this is Dr. Jeff Johnson. He's the director of ILO Philippines. Dr. Johnson, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Good evening.
Okay, so you expect unemployment levels to remain high through 2011 for developed and emerging markets. Is this because the labor market typically lags in a recovery?
That's normally what happens. Labor markets take a little time to adjust. The concern often is what rate. And what we see now with the economy moving on, how these countries adjust will vary. But it is a concern. But the thing we have to bear in mind, it's not only about unemployment. We have other issues that are of concern. For example, in industrialized economies, we often see labor markets react very quickly with unemployment. But in other parts of the world, we look at other adjustments, such as rates of vulnerable employment. And this has been a big concern to the ILO.
Okay, can you talk about the Philippines specifically?
Okay.
What concerns you about the Philippines' unemployment rates?
Okay, unemployment in the Philippines has hovered right around 7%. The crisis directly did not have a significant impact on many of the labor market indicators. But yet again, what it's done is slowed our pace, basically lowering the rates of poverty. If we look at the Millennium Development Goals, the goal globally is to reduce poverty by half by the year 2015. When a crisis like this hits, people that might have wage and salary jobs would lose those jobs, but they're still employed. They would move into ranks of vulnerably employed, becoming own account workers or unpaid family workers. Simply put, they have to work in order to survive.
So that's a rate of 7%. How does this compare to other Southeast Asian nations?
Well, once again, the rate of unemployment within the region is about the same. Some countries are a little higher, some are a little lower. The issue, again, when we have an economic crisis, this number doesn't hit unemployment dramatically in lower middle-income countries like it does in industrialized economies. In an industrialized economy like the United States, when the crisis hit, labor markets adjust very rapidly, and you see a rise in unemployment. But within the developing economy, when this happens, people move out of those wage and salary jobs and move into ranks of vulnerably employed. So you don't see that impact in the unemployment. In the Philippines, we have a rate of unemployment hovering about 7%. We've seen a decrease in this item called vulnerable employment. This moved from 47 down to 43%, nearly half of the labor market. The real concern is the pace of reduction. The crisis probably has had an impact in that in some ways.
Okay, so this 70%, why is it that, we've experienced solid growth over the past, say, 20 years. Why is it that it doesn't necessarily translate to better levels, better unemployment levels?
Correct. The issue is there's always this assumption that growth will resolve all problems. And we know if we look over the last 20 years, we've had periods of strong economic growth. But the rate of reduction globally in terms of working poor hasn't been that dramatic. We haven't really achieved the Millennium Development Goals of reducing poverty by half because we need to look at how we achieve that growth. You can set a growth rate, but how do you achieve that in a society? You have to look at the labor component. We look at how does the education of workers impact their productivities. What about their social dimensions? We need to look at how we raise growth, but we need to look at it through the lens of labor issues, the social dimensions of globalization.
So to remedy the situation, we need to really focus on how the growth is actually achieved. What is the current? What do you find wrong with the way the Philippines attains growth through remittances? We're trying to contain the budget deficit. What is wrong necessarily with those ways? It's
not an issue so much as wrong, but it's also an issue of fine-tuning. Many countries have remittances. It's a very important issue to the Philippines. But how do you create growth within this country given your labor supply? How can we make workers more productive? For migration, for example, as the President said, migration should be an option, not a necessity. And if you can keep workers here in this country and you can create decent and productive jobs for them, in turn you'll raise the remittances, businesses will become more productive, profits will go up, but we need to look at working together. The issue again is not only by creating the jobs here, we create more opportunities because as income rise, people create more demands for goods and services. And if you can produce those goods and services here locally, in turn that creates more jobs. But it creates more opportunities for businesses to create profit at the local level.
Okay, so the government needs to put employment at the forefront of economic and development policies. You say the government understands this. Is it doing enough to this end? I mean, how is the resolve of the government? I mean, these issues are nothing new. How would you say the resolve of the Aquino administration is to improve on this?
Well, I think they understand the problem. I've been here 6 months now, and I've been very impressed with what I've heard from Secretary Baldos, Secretary Pataranga, and others. I think the issues are well known. But I think we have to look beyond just government. The issues about society, about economic growth, about improvement, it's not just the responsibility of government. We need to come together in a public-private partnership, working together. We need to think about how we achieve these goals over the medium and long term. It's not just about short-term profits or short-term earnings. How can workers help firms become more profitable in the medium and long term? Can they give advice? Can they move up? Tenure of employment is one way to increase productivity. Likewise, employers have to think about their workers, because it's not only about that short-term profit, but if a worker's on the job longer, studies show that they're more productive. And if they're more productive, firms are more profitable. But it's so important, again, to think collectively. It's not what government can do alone. It's what governments, workers, and employers can come together to achieve. Because if you want to really have an impact on poverty, it's not just the goal of the job of the government. It's a job of society. And we need to work together. And the countries that have the greatest success in poverty alleviation are those that have looked at how do you increase employment, creating decent and productive jobs, while at the same time having the growth. And you can do both, but it has to come together. It's not a
pie in the sky sort of thing. It's actually attainable.
It is attainable. I mean, I've been working in this field for many years in many countries. I've been working on this report as the former chief of this report for many years, and I've seen success. But the one common denominator is partnership and coming together. And I think this is what I think here in the Philippines can happen. I think the political will is there, but now we have to see if society has the will. Are they willing to come together and address these issues? Because there will be compromise on people's part in the short run, but in the medium and long term, people will be better off if they work together. And again, it's critical how you achieve that growth. It's not just about saying, I will achieve 9-10% growth rates. But the question is, we have to ask our leaders and also our communities and individuals, how do we do that? And basically having this serve society. How do we do this through our labor, improving our educational system, creating opportunities for individuals to contribute? How do we meet the demand?
Can you cite concrete examples? For instance, what countries can we learn off? Can we pick up off from?
Well, I think there are many countries, but I would caution to say that you can mimic a single country. Countries have their own cultures, their own competitive advantages. I think we can look around at best practices. I think you can look at Thailand. I think you can look at cases in Germany where I've seen. I think you can look at even at Liberia where I saw partnerships coming together after the crisis when I was working there. It's that issue of looking around and seeing what you can learn from different countries. During the crisis, for example, Germany, the trade unions and the employers came together. They said, look, demand is down for our products. We have an option of laying people off, or how can we work together to make sure that everybody spreads the burden across? And some of the firms in Germany did this in terms of job sharing. So nobody lost out. Firms maintained that skilled labor force, because if they would have laid somebody off, they might have found a job elsewhere, and they would have lost their investment. So coming together and resolving the problem together basically help many individuals out and help make firms profitable in the medium and long term, not just at this point during the crisis.
All right. Thank you for your time this evening, Dr. Jeff Johnson.